Hi everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about the books that I've read in the month of March. There are 7. It was kind of a standard month. I've read books for, well, one book for Invisible City, a lot were historical fiction. I've read one classic and one science fiction. So, I mean, I don't really read science fiction a lot, but it was kind of science fiction fantasy. It's Dune. I'll talk about it later. So there weren't any really big books that are different from my normal regime, but I did like, I think most of them. Most of them were very solid. Anyway, let's talk about the books first that I'll have separate videos about to dwell in them a little bit longer, so right now I'm going to try to be short. First off, we've got Miss Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I've already have a video about that one, which will be linked up here. It's set after the First World War and in a stream of consciousness way, which is not my thing, which is why I didn't like the book. We read about a couple of characters, how they go about their day. They're all kind of unhappy to different degrees, and they're all very human, and it paints a good portrait of society at that time and troubles that people had. But it's not my thing. We talked about it with my book club this week, and I saw how many things I had totally not picked up on because she touches upon things very lightly. But yeah, no more Virginia Woolf for me. My Invisible Cities book for Norway was Icepalace by Tarjei Vesaas. I have already brought this one back to the library. I read it in Dutch, which was a good choice because Dutch and Norwegian are very similar to one another, so I think the feel of the book would probably have been the same. This one is very short and it's very dark and a bit claustrophobic. There's a lot of nature. It's about 2 girls who have a very intense bond, and then one of them goes missing, and it was very, very good. Another one that was very, very good was Petit by Gael. This one is set in Burundi, a small country under Rwanda, and it talks about a young boy called Gabriel. He's a teenager. At the beginning of the book, he does a lot of teenage stuff with his friends, but his mother is Rwandan, his father is French, so there's tension there. And at one point, the Rwandan genocide starts happening, and the tension between Hutus and Tutsis and everything that happens there also impacts his life, partly because the war also goes over to Burundi, but also because of his family. And the second half is really good, but it's tough also as well. I also read Kind of a Cave Bear by Jean M. Auel. This one is prehistoric fiction. It's about a young girl in prehistoric times. She's separated from her tribe. She's probably Homo sapiens, but then she's taken in by a different tribe that is a different human species, race. I forgot the difference between species and race, but they have physical differences that also impact their culture, and it's about how she grows up and tries to fit in this tribe, and everything what makes her different is a struggle. It's written very much in detail, but there are still things that are very much fiction. And it was a bigger book, there was a lot of repetition, but I ended up liking it, although I'm not going to continue with the series. I also read The Underground Railroad. Well, I listened to it on audio, so Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. For the longest time I wasn't really drawn to Colson Whitehead because of the hype and of the intensity, I believe, that there is in his books. And this was indeed intense, but not in the same way that I thought. This one is a slave narrative, and we follow Cora, who is brought up on a slave plantation, and we learn about her life there. Also, she's a orphan, and at one point she flees using the Underground Railroad, and she uses that a couple of times, and at each new space we discover the way racism impacted her life and the way Black people in general were oppressed in different ways. Thought this one was brilliant, learned a lot. I like the nuances and the things that are at the same time in your face. Now, those were the books that I also have other videos about. That's the same for this one, Great Expectations by Geert, but the separate review I'm going to do, this one will be in Dutch because this is a Dutch book, so I will talk about this more now. You'll probably have heard me mention this one a couple of times before because I've been reading this book throughout the last 3 months. It's a big non-fiction about the history of Europe from the year 1999 to 2019. And while it is about Europe in general, because the writer is Dutch, there are certain points where he does talk more specifically about the position of the Netherlands and not only the position of the Netherlands within Europe, but also how Europe then impacted the Netherlands and some specific Dutch politicians. Nevertheless, because it does talk about Europe as a whole, I think that even if you're not Dutch, it would be interesting. I have been alive for this whole section of history, but part of it I was a child and the other part I was studying and not really following the news. In this book, he goes from period to period, and each period he takes the crisis that was a thing at that moment. So at the beginning of the book, it's just setting up the stage, talking about how we are coming into the second millennium and the position of Europe, the position of the US, the position of Russia. And then, like I said, he goes from crisis to crisis. So he starts with the attack on the Twin Towers, 9/11, and how that influences the position of Muslims in Europe and all that shift. He talks about the euro and the positive, negatives, how everything came to pass. And what I liked is that with each crisis, he doesn't really describe the crisis itself, but also the reasons for the crisis that are also linked throughout history. It's not how one crisis impacts another, but what are the overarching things that we can see throughout the crises that are problems in Europe. So we've got the euro, we've got a little bit of a migrant crisis situation in 2004, we've got in 2008 the bank crisis and the situation with Greece. We've got how a big chunk of the Eastern European countries join Europe and what that meant in the beginning, but what that meant also after a couple of years, when in the beginning they were still learning to be their own democratic selves and just happy they were part of Europe, and then after a couple of years also just being a little bit tired of Europe enforcing themselves in their lives and not really knowing already what their own national culture is. We've got the immigration crisis and as a result of the Syrian war in 2014. We've got the Brexit, we've got Trump, we've got Putin and Ukraine, which was interesting. I was just in that chapter when the war here broke out, or the tension rose, so I appreciate having more background on the problems that we have now. It's written in a very approachable way. It wasn't dry at all, especially the bank crisis. I was invested. I was really curious what the next step was going to be. It's not a thriller, but I loved it. Little battery change. Anyway, I was invested. There was a point where I had to go eat. The food was ready. I was like, no, but I want to know what is going to happen next. I'm nearly at the end. I really liked the way it was written. He doesn't always go from crisis to crisis. There are also certain points where he lets someone else talk. So, for example, we have a woman that fled, I can't remember, a country in Africa, went to Denmark, but then she describes how people viewed her there, and then she goes to the Netherlands. So it's like there are a couple of times where we have these point of view of specific people in Europe, which broke it up and made it very small and personal. That was a very good choice. I loved also because he's, like I said, he does focus a little bit on the Netherlands, obviously, and I love the part where he talks also about the climate crisis and the point of view of the farmers in the Netherlands and the struggles that they have I love delving into this. I learned a lot, and because it's told in this very narrative way, I kind of want to know what's coming up next. I was at the end of the book, and it reads like some sort of series. He's also made the previous book was the history of Europe from 1980 to 2000. So it makes sense that if he's still alive, because he's about 46, so that makes him 75, I think he is old. If he's still alive for the next 20 years, maybe he's going to make another. And right now, I would like to read the 2020 to 2040 book, if that makes sense. It's very weird. I would recommend it if you don't know a lot about European history but want a comprehensive but overall guide to it, because it's very readable. It draws overarching conclusions, which I really appreciate, but at the same time there are some things that it's not really deep dive because there isn't enough space for that, but I didn't feel like he was skimming over stuff. So really appreciated this. Last book that I want to talk about is Dune by Frank Herbert. I'm not entirely sure what I think about this one yet. It's science fiction. It's science fiction that is written in a way that is very reminiscent of fantasy. There's a lot of world building in this, and that is the reason that I wanted to pick it up, because I love world building and I wanted to delve into a series again, and I was kind of hesitating between this one and Robin Hobb's books. But because the movie came out, I thought I would do this one. Initially I was not interested because science fiction is not necessarily my thing, and I thought that it was, based on the trailer, I thought it was a very complicated world. Well, not complicated, didn't really care, but gee, I don't know. There was something in the trailer that I wasn't really interested. But I'm glad I picked up the book. I love the world building, indeed. Let me first talk about the book itself. So this is a Star Wars-y kind of universe with planets, and we've got major houses that take care of planets, and the major overlord is the Count, and he kind of decides who gets to live where. He makes all of the big decisions. And he decides that there's this planet called Arrakis, yes, who before that was being looked after by the Harkonnens, and now it was going to be looked after the Atreides. I haven't had to say any of these words out loud, so now it's weird. And this planet is very important because on the planet spice is produced, and spice is the big drug that all of the rich people are using and are addicted to. So it's a very important planet. Now, the Atreides, that is the family that we're going to follow, and our main character is the son of the Duke. He's called Paul. And there's a lot of prophecy surrounding him. His mother is part of a big group of women that are trying to make sure that the history of this whole world is going in a certain way. And they kind of know that they're going to face problems on this planet, because the previous owners, the Harkonnens, want it back, because owning that planet means power. So the first half of the book is kind of the build-up of that. We get a little bit of an introduction to the world, and the second part is more the results of the Harkonnens taking over, trying to take over again. What I liked most is the world building part, where they meet the local people of this planet. This planet is very dry, there's no water, and the indigenous people are called the Freemen, and their whole culture is about living with a little water. And I loved everything surrounding that. That was the part that, if I knew that the latter books also talk about this, I would definitely continue with the series. However, I don't know, so I don't know yet. There are parts that I didn't like that had to do with all of the politics, but that is my own taste. And I'm not really interested in, you know, the Count and the son and the marriages. And there's also one thing, prophecies are very big, and Paul, he's kind of the one character. But he's the one in such, he's not the one in like, gee, take any the one, where people are very interested in here. In this one, he is people see him as a kind of god, and I thought that went, I think that went a little bit too far, and he also struggles with it. He kind of sees there are these time things, the way he views the world, I thought was also, I didn't really understand, that was confusing. It's science fiction, and I do notice that the science fiction-y stuff, I'm not really used to it, so I don't really know how to place it. But I'm liking discovering a world, so that is good. I don't know whether I'm going to continue with the series, but I'm gonna have to see. First, I'm gonna watch the movie. I'm kind of looking forward to that because I had the images that I saw from the trailer while watching this, and I think that seeing also the Freemen and how they're going to interpret that is going to be very interesting. I'd be curious what you think, if you've read the other book, the second book, third book, what you made of it. Is it still more or less about the Freemen and their culture and other cultures and stuff like that, or is it veering towards what the end of the book like foreshadows, more of the political thing, because that I am less interested in. So yeah, unsure, but I do like this cover. I spent a lot of time trying to find this one and not the new movie cover, and I know that the second book and the third book also, I also like those covers, so that would be a reason to continue. And also, you know what I found weird with this one? There is a map, but I don't understand this map. It's like a planet, but then made flat, and I couldn't find a lot of the stuff. I'm confused. That doesn't help when you see stuff, you try to find it on the map, you can't find it, and you don't know whether it's because you're too zoomed in, too zoomed out, etc. So anyway, that is Dune. I'm going to stop talking again because, as usual, I'm veering off towards the end of the video. Couple of these you'll see in next videos, if I think of filming it, because I still need to, for example, film my video about bewilderment, and I feel that it's already dropping by in my mind. I'm already rambling. I'm gonna shut up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.